everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike. I'm a project coordinator with Africa Fire Mission, and we're so happy that you took time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Nancy Moore, who's Executive Director of Africa Fire Mission. She's going to be doing a presentation today on suicide awareness. Before we get started, I'm going to pass things over to Errol. Errol's one of our volunteer fire safety advocates. And Errol's going to share a few words of encouragement with us. Take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, Chief Mike. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. Good evening, all members. Welcome to this amazing session today we're having, and it's going to be exciting. So mine will be very brief as we focus on today's lesson, and also as all of us continue doing well. Today is the Love Day, the Valentine's Day. Others call it Ash Wednesday. For the Christians, they're celebrating the 40 days of praying and fasting. For the lovers, they are sending flowers, chocolates. Well, congratulations to all. I want to just mention something that all of us need to think about. It says, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. Remember, out of the abundance of the heart is the mouth speaketh. So whatever you think get interpreted in subconscious and then out of the mouth. So let us all encourage each other. Let us all always give good advice. Let us all have positive vibes and positive words to each and every one of us. That means we need to check our words before they leave our mouth. Thank you very much, and I pass it over to you, Madam Nancy. Karibu sana.
Thanks, Errol. We always appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to join us, and thanks for those words of encouragement. Before we get started with today's class, just a couple administrative notes. If you stick around for at least 70% of today's training, which is usually about 40 or 45 minutes, you receive a certificate of attendance for today's class. If you've got other folks watching along with you, you can send an email to me. Let me know who's watching with you. We'll get you a certificate of attendance for those as well. Keep your eye on the chat. Later on during the class, I'll give you a link to our Google Drive. If you happen to get cut off or you can't complete today's training, you can go to our Google Drive and get this week's training or any of the other trainings that we've done this year. If you watch the video, answer a few questions, I can get you a certificate of attendance for that class as well. When we get finished here, I'll ask that you might stick around for tea time after the top of the hour. It's a chance for you to ask questions about today's class or anything else that may be on your mind. At this point in time, I think I'm going to pass things over to Nancy to get started. Take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We had a slight glitch this morning with just change in instructor, but I am so excited to see you all and to get to spend this afternoon, or in my case, morning, with you. Wanted to just take a moment to also introduce Africa Fire Mission's new staff person, Wesley. Wesley Richmond is a student at the University of Cincinnati and will be helping us with some of our administrative tasks here in the office, and you'll find him some on our social media accounts as well. So I just want to welcome him to the Africa Fire Mission team. So this morning, Errol, I really appreciated those words of encouragement as we think about both this Ash Wednesday and Valentine's Day. And I recently learned that Valentine's Day is a huge holiday, at least in Kenya. I had no idea, and it was really exciting for me to learn a little bit about that in my recent trip to Kenya. But sometimes in days like this, that actually can be a hard day for us as people. Maybe things aren't going the way that we would like them to, or days are feeling hard or tough. And so we want to think about the ways that we can support ourselves and the ways that our families and fire service family can support us in our mental wellness. And so today we're going to talk about suicide prevention, and we're going to talk about that with some of the concepts in AFM's mental health system of care, and especially psychological first aid and what is stress and kind of understanding that. So I really do want to encourage you, if you are those of you that are here and are able, please do unmute yourself and ask questions as we go along. This being a conversation is a really great thing today as we go. So I'm going to not share that. Hang on, I just lost my screen. There we go. All right. So as I mentioned, some of you know already that I am actually a social worker by profession. And so this topic of mental health first aid is really important to me and to you. All right, so these are some old statistics at this point, but I think that they're still relevant, and these are related to the fire service and in the US and the general public in the US. And you can see that suicidal thoughts and behaviors are pretty relevant in fire service. And there's lots of reasons for that. There's lots of reasons that our thoughts can get dark and be thinking about hurting ourselves. And especially in the fire service, you guys see and experience a lot. Every day. I was talking to one of the fire service guys in Nairobi this last week, and he was sharing just some of the community's reaction to them coming in, following some of the WhatsApp comments recently in some of the groups that I'm part of. There's a lot of times when not only is your job hard and you're seen and doing difficult things, but you might have other difficulties at the fire station where maybe things aren't being provided to you that they need to be, or at home things are stressful, maybe related to your time in the fire service, and then the things that you see on the job. And the difficulties in getting to a fire late and knowing how devastating that is for a community, because the community hasn't called you, and that stress of the fact that you weren't able to do as good of a job as you wanted to do. So this is a relevant thing, and we want to think about that. And we'll talk about the ideation is the thoughts of suicide that we might have. Plans are actually having a plan for what we might do, and then actually attempting suicide. So one of the things that accumulates that can cause suicidal ideation is stress. And stress is really just that worry or difficulty with emotions. If you want, you could put a show of hands. I think all of us can say we've experienced some sort of stress in our lives. And that is a normal part of life. Normal to experience stress, but what we really have to do is figure out what we will do with that stress when it happens. There's a lot of physical effects of stress that we want to be aware of. All kinds of medical conditions, fatigue, things, asthma, stress, muscle aches and pains, post-traumatic stress disorder, headaches, diabetes. All these things can be caused by cumulative stress. And so we want to be able to find ways to actually manage and deal with our stress as we go. There's also a lot of behavioral effects of stress. We can be accident prone. A lot of the AFM team members would say I'm regularly under stress because I'm very accident prone. Anger, argumentativeness, we can feel neurotic, or even just little things like biting our nails, being irritable, not being able to concentrate the way that we used to, withdrawing from people, rage. feeling angry. All those things are behavioral effects of stress that we can experience. So stress can have also three kind of different points to it. It can be positive, tolerable, or it can be toxic. Positive stress actually really helps you on the job, right? Positive stress helps you get into that fire, do your job, take care of things, ignore what's going on that's negative in the environment, and get the fires out, rescue the person, all of those kinds of things. Tolerable stress can still be serious, but it can be buffered by supportive relationships. So you'll see that you can get through by going back to the fire station and talking about the incidents that happened, or at the fire station talking about what's going on at home, or at home talking about what's going on at work. So find that can be very tolerable. You can process your stress and move on. And then there's toxic stress. And this is where your stress levels stay heightened for a long period of time. And you oftentimes don't have productive or protective relationships to help you through it. And the one thing we want to think about with stress, you see this relationship piece being a part of stress. Relationships can really be helpful to us. And one of the things I'll talk about some more here in a little bit, but is the fact that positive stress, when supported by relationships, as I mentioned, really helps. But we want people to be with us in that tolerable stress period, and it can really prevent toxic stress. So let me pause there for just a moment and give an opportunity. What are some examples that you might have related to stress? What are some things that you've experienced? You can just unmute yourself or put that in the chat. Back to that definition of stress. Or maybe that you've seen others experience. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, insomnia, lack of enough sleep, or
Yes.
maybe, and also nightmares at night.
Absolutely. Those can be stress related. Yeah, and sometimes the nightmares can be traumatic stress related. Definitely. Thanks, Errol. Anyone else? This can be sometimes a tough topic to open up about. How have you experienced stress or seen others experience stress? Okay, we'll keep going. So I want to introduce kind of this Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I bring this forward. Some of you have probably seen this before, but it really helps us to understand the needs, and then if we understand our needs, we can understand sometimes how to deal with stress a little bit differently. So first, we have our physiological needs: food, water, warmth, rest. I think about clothing in this. Are we taking care of physically? When we're not taking care of physically, stress increases. So those are basic needs that we want to make sure. Thanks, David, for mentioning financial constraints. Absolutely, that is a stress factor for a lot of us, and kind of fits in with this hierarchy of needs as well. If we're not getting regular compensation for our job or something like that, that can create financial constraints, or if we've lost our job or had a change. Absolutely. So then we think about, so we get those physiological needs met. And then we think about safety needs, things like just being safe. Are we safe in our environment? So when I think about a lot of the fire incidents that I've heard some of you describe, oftentimes those are situations where you are not safe. And you are, not only because of the difficulty of your job, but because of how the community might be reacting to you. And so that can increase stress levels as well. And we want to make sure that those needs are being met. That's a big reason why AFM really advocates within both of these basic need areas that we advocate for community outreach as a part of what you're doing as firefighters, because when the community's connected to you, they help become part of your security and safety net when you're going into their communities. So once we have our physiological and our safety needs met, then we can get into those psychological needs. And so belongingness, love, intimate relationship, friends, having your Valentine, all of those things. Some of you maybe today are thinking, man, Valentine's Day, I can't even think about that. That could be because of where your stress levels are and the needs that you need to have met. So that belongingness and intimate friendship or intimate relationships can really be friendships too. I think oftentimes in the fire service, those that you serve with become very close friends. And so you want to be aware of how you are interacting with your fellow firefighters, or with your fellow firefighters. Esteem needs, feeling esteemed, feeling prestige, feeling accomplished. That's our next level of need. And so that might come with education. It might come with accomplishments on the job, getting things done at home, those feelings of accomplishment that happen. And then finally, self-actualization, really being able to achieve your full potential. It's really difficult, and we do jump around this sometimes, but oftentimes people will find that they are struggling with some of these other areas of needs, the psychological needs and the self-fulfillment, self-actualization, if their basic needs are not being met. And so many times it's going back to, what do I need to be physiologically taken care of, financially taken care of, and to have my safety needs met? That can be really important. So when we don't take care of our stress, we experience burnout. Burnout is physical and emotional, mental exhaustion caused by long-term involvement in emotionally demanding situations. Causes emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, decreased feelings of personal accomplishment, and it gets worse over time. Symptoms of burnout: a lack of enthusiasm, decreased interest in our daily activities. Our job performance might suffer. We might have temper flare-ups or loss of motivation, commitment, willpower. This is a really important time to notice what's going on with your friends and family, to check in with them if you think that this might be happening. And then we get into trauma, kind of the third stage that can be related to suicidal behavior and attempts and thoughts. And trauma is an event or series of events or set of circumstances that's experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening. It has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning and mental, physical well-being. So this can be come up for a lot of situations. If you think of that as an event, a series of events, or a set of circumstances, we really can see times when trauma is cumulative and can be built on. Your experience of the event is what causes the trauma experience. And one of the things that I want to emphasize with this is not everybody that has the same experiences trauma. So that's where that cumulative stress can come in, that burnout can come in, and someone might experience trauma as a result of work or other things that are experienced. There's also secondary trauma. So trauma that is a result of stress, burnout, even supporting people that are particularly vulnerable to trauma. The symptoms are real, they're cumulative, psychologically distressing, and it's usually outside of our normal experience. We can have intense fear, terror, helplessness, even PTSD symptoms, which we'll talk about. And this can last long after removing yourself from the situation. So we can experience trauma directly, or we can experience trauma because of something that someone else has experienced as well. So a couple questions for you to think about here. What are some situations that maybe you've responded to? You could think about this yourself, or maybe put it in the chat, that cause stress, burnout, trauma, secondary trauma. These could be things that you witness or directly experience. If anyone would like to comment, feel free. Otherwise, just think about those for yourself. Yeah, attending to a multi-casual incident. Thanks, Blessing. Fires where people have lost their homes or their lives. Medical responses. There can be all kinds of different situations where that comes up. So one of the things that we want to think about with relationship to this is to shift our thinking a little bit. Firefighters are highly likely, in fact, I would say 99.9% likely to experience trauma as a result of your career. And there could be other things that you experience as well, but trauma is a big one. So we want to stop asking what's wrong with you. We want to start thinking about what's happened, what's going on, what's happened to you. David just mentioned a call that they had last week in a boarding school where a student had an abortion and the child was dumped in a pit latrine. That's very traumatic when you're responding to those kinds of runs. So yeah, trauma is around us all the time. And so we want to think about ourselves and our fellow firefighters and think about what's really happening, not thinking about what's wrong or what's wrong with you, stop being that way, but how you can support each other and support your healing to avoid that suicidal thoughts or behaviors. Blessing just mentioned the death of a victim that you're helping. Yeah, sometimes you can experience something that you thought you had a chance to save someone and you weren't able to. The fire department that Mike calls on just had a incident this week where one of their members was teaching a class and passed away with first responders there and available to assist them immediately. You never know what could happen, and those things can be really difficult. So we want to think about how we can support each other and support each other's healing. I like to think of it this way. You're a sponge. You can absorb a lot with a sponge. A lot of water can be pulled up with that sponge. It's what it's designed to do. But eventually, that sponge has to be drained out. The water has to be released from that sponge, right? Or it stops doing its job. You're a sponge. We've got to release some of that stress. We've got to release that trauma, or it's overwhelming. And thank you all for continuing to share some of your own experiences. Really difficult situations when you're helping communities with situations like this. So you're a sponge. We've got to find ways to release the stress that you experience. So first, we want to understand what symptoms or behavior might result from these traumatic experiences. So we'll talk about that here for a moment, and then talk about how do we release this stress and this trauma. So symptoms of trauma can be feeling overwhelmed, not being able to relax or rest, hypervigilance, a short fuse, anger. This is one I watch for quite a lot because behavior just changes. It's different than normal. And so we want to be aware of that. Not wanting to return to work, change in heart rate, unresolved personal traumas, unresolved previous traumas from work, nightmares, can't stop thinking about an incident, maybe drug or alcohol use, depression, feeling suicidal itself, not being able to complete daily activities, feeling numb, poor concentration. All of these things are symptoms of trauma. And sometimes we can experience those things and they may not be directly related to trauma, but it's something that we want to pay attention to and watch for. I always think that this is an interesting slide from Ohio State University, talking about a victim of trauma and kind of what can happen in their daily life. So we have this basic lack of trust and safety, loss of emotional management, problems thinking, so their cognition, communication problems, they're communicating differently, struggling with authority, confused sense of justice, or an inability to grieve or anticipate the future. So these things can all kind of be indicators that we might be experiencing trauma, or we might know someone that's experiencing trauma and the stress that's related to that. So some other common behaviors that we might see, testing boundaries, difficulty with trust and intimacy, being argumentative, avoidance, seeking more control than usual. All those can be additional indicators of trauma. So again, kind of seeing how all of those things can feed into our daily challenges can be really something difficult for us to pay attention to. So this can happen to anyone. This happens to be Dave Moore, who's my husband and the founder of Africa Fire Mission. And he experienced the stress, the burnout, and then a incident on the job that he experienced as trauma. And that resulted in him really needing the support of his fellow firefighters. And so I want to talk about kind of ways that we can support each other and what we can do about this trauma. So I want you to know this is personal. This happens to anyone. And just because you're tough, just because you do a good job, doesn't mean that you aren't vulnerable to this. So there's a lot that we can do about it. And I want to use this grid example to help us think about this. So we can build this grid around ourselves with people, things that we love, doing good things for ourselves, taking care of others, talking about what's happened. And if we look, now we have less of a chance to fall through that grid because we've had good support. So let's look at what we do about all of this stress, trauma. And this is really where we get into thinking about preventing suicide and also just being aware of what might be coming up for someone. First, we want to take care of ourselves, both on and off the job. We want to acknowledge what we're experiencing. Tell someone we trust what we're experiencing and get support. So that's for ourselves. At the fire station, or I know we've got some EMTs here. So with your ambulance teams, notice if someone doesn't seem to be themselves. Just notice it and then tell them that you've noticed. Ask them how they're doing and if there's anything that you can do. They might tell you no. Probably many of us have done that. We've asked a friend how they're doing and they said, I'm fine. And you know that they are not telling you the truth. That's okay. Just be there for them. Support them. Let them know that you are there to talk if they want that help. So support each other, even when someone doesn't seem to want to have those ways of support. Also, so that's you as an individual, and then you at the fire station. And then we want to think about, as a fire brigade, what are some things that you can do? So we want to acknowledge members that everyone can experience stress, burnout, trauma, and secondary trauma. We want to provide a supportive environment where people can talk about what's happening and get the support that they need. We want to have both formal and informal opportunities to talk. So I know either recently or coming up, there's a class specifically about critical incident stress debriefing and management. Those can be formal ways to talk about what's happened. But we also want to provide informal ways, just sharing with your peers what's going on with you, or asking can be really helpful. Think about in those times, maybe it's time for to have some choma together, to make sure that we're having a meal together, to cook together, to have a volleyball game or a football game, finding those things that can help you on and off the job, connected to your work. Find different ways. So I encourage fire chiefs to think about making sure that you are noticing what the needs of your members are, and if the group or an individual is having a hard time. Chaplaincy programs can be really helpful for this. And then I also encourage fire departments to consider having professional counselors and social workers that are part of their team that can help in these situations as well. So we want formal and informal supports. So I want to give an opportunity here. We've looked at some of what can happen, and then these are some things that additional things that we can do. But I want to just give an opportunity here to think about some of these things. What are some things that you already do to support your fellow firefighters when you notice that maybe they've had a traumatic experience, or maybe you've even experienced something together? Again, you can utilize the chat if you'd like, or just unmute yourself. to share. What are some things that you do to support each other?
Hello, Mr. Nancy.
Yeah. Hi.
Uh, most of the times, what we do to support each other is by socializing together, especially when we are on our off time. When we
Yeah,
go somewhere, we socialize, we talk about what we did, what went wrong, and how can we fix it, and then we are supporting each other in the meantime.
definitely. Definitely. I think I lost the end of that, but supporting each other on and off the job, doing things together. Absolutely. Great way to support each other. Good. Other things. Hi, Cyrus.
Hi, Nancy.
Hi, Cyrus.
Hi. I think a big support that I think it is good for us is one is all about socialization. We need to socialize with everybody in fire station so that we can understand each other at which time so and so is going difficulty situations and which time is so and so needs our support, maybe financially or advice. I think that's my big area that I deal with.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. And that you used a important word there is trust, right? When you're socializing together, when you're working together, you're building trust on the job, that you trust each other. And when you go onto those fire scenes, you need that trust built and developed, so that you can be both effective on the job, but also when you go back and there's been a difficult situation, like some of these that have been shared in the chat, that you have an opportunity to um, support each other and to continue that trust. So thank you for that one. Anyone else? Okay, well, let's get into a few of the things. So I mentioned Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and when we think about that, we think about, well, how do I get these needs met that you've mentioned? And sometimes we get very focused on our financial needs. And one of the things that I want to just have us think about is we have a lot more needs than just those physical needs. And there's a lot of times when we can overcome some of those difficulties by getting some of our other needs met. So these I think of as the spices of life: our social needs, our physical needs, our intellectual needs, creative needs, emotional and spiritual needs. And so with that, sorry, let me spend a little more time here. So with the spices here, take a moment maybe after the training, or even we can do this during tea time. And I want you to each think about a way that you can get each one of these needs met. What are you doing to get your social needs met? What are you doing to get your physical needs met? What are you doing to get your intellectual needs met and your creative, emotional, and spiritual needs? Are you lacking in one of those areas? Maybe that emotional side, you've distanced yourself from friends. Maybe you're staying away from everybody at the fire station. Maybe you have a really creative thing that you like to do. Maybe it's mechanical, maybe it's art, maybe it's making things with your hands. Whatever those things are you doing them? They're great ways to release stress, get our needs met, and help us. Sometimes some of these need areas are lacking, and it might be that if we can fill that need, that we can reduce our stress and reduce our chance of suicidal ideation. So some of that, taking care of ourselves on and off the job, self-awareness, faith, hope, adaptability, having empathy, accepting others, being flexible, being vulnerable, being connected, having compassion, and doing self-care. It's amazing how something as small as taking a bath or a shower can help us feel better about what's happening in life. And so finding ways to do those kinds of self-care can be really helpful. We also can do some things to strengthen our resiliency muscles. So resiliency is our ability to bounce back after difficult situations. And there's a lot of things that we can do to help that. We can take time each day to find something to be thankful for. Be creative, spend 5 to 10 minutes every day drawing or writing or doing something that's just fun. Connecting with people, building a relationship, a new one, or strengthening an existing one, and experimenting, trying something new. It's been fun to watch some fire brigades across Africa trying some new things. Maybe that's exercising together, utilizing available resources to do that. Maybe it's singing together or dancing or just playing music or cooking. Maybe it's going out into the community for outreaches and hanging out with the kids in your community to teach them about fire prevention. So it can look like a lot of different things, but finding those ways to strengthen our resiliency. We can build confidence by, at the end of every day, identifying something new that we learned, and that could be something silly or something significant. As firefighters, are you learning new things about your jobs? Those of you that are here, you're doing that. You're relearning, practicing, asking questions, but helping others to do that as well, sharing that knowledge with them. Do you have structure in your life? What's the structure of your day at the fire station? Are you doing daily drills? Are you structuring your time? Are you doing truck checks? Are you cleaning the fire station? That can be structure that you can put into your work life if you're not doing those things already. You might also need some structure at your home life. So thinking about what those things could be. And then priorities. One of the things I think that can get hard, that I've heard firefighters across the world talk about at times, is sometimes it feels like, well, I'm just sitting around, and community might say this too, I'm sitting around waiting for that next fire call. What priorities do you have while you're waiting for that? Yes, you need to be ready for emergencies, but are you identifying some priorities and some other goals that you're able to accomplish on the job? And so really thinking about those areas of resiliency that we can build. So I want to stop for just a moment here, and we're coming close to our time. So this is a conversation we'll continue to build, but I want to talk for a moment just about some things related to what do you do if you see somebody, or if you are feeling like you want to hurt yourself, or even somebody else. But if you're feeling suicidal, what do you do? So first is ask for help. Tell somebody what's going on. Tell them what you're experiencing and ask for help. If somebody asks you for help, or if you notice that maybe they might need some help, please don't be afraid to ask them if they're thinking about hurting themselves. There's a big myth that if I ask someone if they're thinking about hurting themselves, that will cause them to hurt themselves. And that is not true. It has been shown by research that actually most people would love for somebody to identify that something's wrong and to ask them what's wrong and how they can help. And so if we notice that somebody seems to be feeling differently than normal, if we can really talk to them with that, what's happening, what's going on, we really can have an opportunity to provide support to them. So please ask. If you're experiencing something, several of you mentioned, nightmares and these incidents kind of running through our heads that have happened, please talk about those things. Find someone that you can share it with. And it might be that you're sharing it with somebody that was also on the call with you. Be supportive of each other. A lot of times when we think about reviewing an incident, we think about talking about what went wrong and what do we need to do to fix it for next time. That's a good thing to do, but there's also an emotional processing that you might need to do even before that, to think about, man, this happened and I don't feel good about it. And so talking about that, being open about that when you can with your fellow firefighters and emergency responders can be really helpful. So I just want to encourage you on this Day of Love. This is a hard topic maybe, but I want you to think about on this Ash Wednesday and on this Valentine's Day, what you can do to support each other and build that resiliency that we talked about. And you're always welcome to reach out to the AFM team if there's something going on. We have the WhatsApp groups. There's our networking group on Facebook. I encourage you to reach out in those ways to share what's happening. We want to be here to support you, not only as you train as a firefighter, but as you train as for your mental wellness in the fire service as well. So thank you all so much. And I'll pass it back to Mike for us to transition to tea time.
Thanks, Nancy. We always appreciate when you get the chance to come and join us for a training, even if it's at the last moment. So thank you very much for that. And thank you to everyone else for joining us today. This is really important topic that doesn't get addressed as often maybe as it should in our field. So thank you all for taking the time. I encourage you all to take what you've heard today and to go out to your stations and with your fellow firefighters and talk about what you heard today. I think at this point in time, we're going to wrap up our training here, but we're going to continue that discussion as we move into tea time if folks would have more that they'd like to share. So thank you all for coming. Please invite your friends, and we'll see you all again right here next week.